Good evening. I'm Donna Cooper, and I'm the host tonight for the Pennsylvania Forecast. That's my job this evening. My day job is the Executive Director of Children First. We are the Southeast Pennsylvania's region's leading child advocacy organization, and we have an awful lot to tell you about the future for children in Pennsylvania based on the fact that the governor just announced his 8th and final budget today, and we're going to tell you what the forecast is. So to kick us off tonight, we're going to start with the big news, and we're going to invite Tamia Scipio-Smith to join us. Yay, Tamia! Nice to meet you. So glad you're here. Now, Tamia is a lawyer by training and an education activist in her life, and she's been fighting to improve the quality of education in Pennsylvania for years. Thanks for doing that. I really appreciate it. It's important. And today was a big day, right?
It absolutely was. And the forecast for education is sunny. All right. Sunny in our state, Pennsylvania. Mainly because the governor has really, truly invested in our kids in terms of education funding. And it's been a monumental example of what it means for our kids when we invest in them in this particular budget address.
Well, tell us more about it. What did he do?
He was phenomenal in his work. He put forth $1.25 billion that should be going through the fair funding formula to all 500 school districts. But that's not all he did. He invested, or he's suggesting that we invest $300 million in a level up supplement to go to the districts that are the farthest away from adequacy and equitable funding. And that is phenomenal because those 100 districts impact 60+% of the Black kids that are in the state, 58% of the Latinx kids in the state, 58% of the kids in poverty, and more than 1/3 of the kids who are in special education classes. But not only that, he did a little more.
Yeah.
He even invested, or he's saying that we should invest $200 million in special education. Now, is that a sunny forecast or what?
Yeah. So tell me, one of the things that happens in public schools sometimes is when you give them more money, charters also get more money. What did the governor do in that regard?
Well, the governor has actually made another historic proposal in terms of $373 million going back to education funding, by $174 million running through, $174 million going through the special ed funding formula that doesn't currently go that way, and an additional $199 million by actually standardizing charter rates for cyber schools so that it's $9,800 per student. The way that we currently fund it is just all over the place. But this gives a nice familiarity and gets the money back to the school districts that educate more than 90% of the state's kids.
So let me see if I get this right. The cyber charters, which educate 10% of the kids, like if a kid from Lower Merion was going there, they get paid like $28,000. And if a kid from Reading was going there, they get paid $11,000. And what the governor's saying is, you know what, that doesn't make any sense. They should be paid the same no matter where a kid's coming from. Is that right?
That's what he's saying.
All right. And I think a lot of lawmakers are saying that too, right?
They have. There has been this one particular bill, HB 272, that's gained lots and lots of traction. It's getting bipartisan support because a lot of people are saying we should be funding our schools and according with what we're spending, at least when it comes to charters.
Wow, that's great. So bipartisan support behind the cyber charters. Now the other thing, tell me if I have this right on this like charter special ed thing. School districts are paid one way on special ed now, and charters are paid another way. And basically what the governor's saying is everybody should be paid the same. Is that right?
That's what he's saying. Makes sense to me.
Yeah, totally makes sense. So what are you going to do to make all this possible? Like he proposed it, but he's not king. So
we're going to push and get our lawmakers to act because it's about time. Every child in Pennsylvania, according to the Constitution, is entitled to a thorough and efficient education. If we continue to invest the way that the governor is proposing, we'll get there. So we are pushing our lawmakers to do this.
Well, who are you working with across the state?
Funny you should ask. We have PA Schools Work because we know that our schools work only when they are adequately and equitably funded for our kids.
So let me just make it clear to our viewers that we are not applauding the governor's proposal because he's a Democrat or because he's a Republican, but because it's the right thing to do for kids. Because when you said 1.25 billion that's going through the fair funding formula, and then you said 300 million going to the poorest district, like 1.5 billion, that's about a quarter or more of what the school districts are short, right?
Well, they're short by $4.6 billion, and this is a great investment, but we have so much more to do.
Well, we'll be part of BA Schools Work, and we'll be fighting right beside you, Tammy, and thank you so much
It's
for
been a
being here
pleasure.
tonight for the Pennsylvania forecast. I hope all the news is equally sunny. Let's ask my Mixic to come into the show here. I want to thank the studio audience for being so enthusiastic. And Mai is our early childhood education director, and we got her from New York, where they really know how to get things done and have amazing support for childcare. And Mai also, this is not academic to her because she told me when I interviewed her, she's a Head Start kid. So this is like for real.
Well, second, we are having some technical difficulties. Testing. Testing.
No.
Testing. Okay, did you back up?
So, sorry for the interruption, folks. This show's so popular, more people were trying to get in and we got thrown off.
Oh.
We're busting the internet. Anyhow, as I was saying, Mai's our early childhood education policy director, and this is not an academic issue for her because she was a Head Start kid herself. And so it makes it especially important to find out what you think about the governor's budget proposal. So what's your sense of the forecast when it comes to the youngest kids?
Well, for the youngest kids, the forecast is partly cloudy or partly sunny, depending on whether you're a half full, half empty kind of person. But for pre-K and Head Start, it's sunny. Governor has proposed 70 million, 60 million for pre-K and 10 million for Head Start. So that's an additional 2,308 kids that are going to have access to high quality early child education because of what the governor, if what the governor proposes goes through.
Wow, what happens if you're 9? 2,309.
Oh gosh,
Oh, damn.
I know. But that money is not just for increased slots, it's also to pay the providers more. So we're increasing the quality that those kids are getting in their programs.
That's amazing. So, okay, what's the partly cloudy side?
Well, the partly cloudy side is that there's no new state money for childcare. So we're talking about the youngest kids out there, some of them very vulnerable because they're in underserved areas. They're not getting an extra state dollar out of this. Now, they did propose to use some federal funds to buoy the system along, and we know that there has been pandemic aid that has kept childcare doors open. But for kids, they need a place to go before they can get to pre-K. And so it's really important that we have supports for the entire early child education system and not just pre-K.
So if they had put money on the table, what would they be using it for? Is there a shortage of childcare? Like, what's the situation why we needed more state money?
So there's a shortage of childcare slots right now in the system, not because programs aren't able to serve them, but because there's a staffing shortage. So if they had enough staff, they could open classrooms and serve more kids. But the staffing crisis has really been, has really been caused by a number of issues. One being the pandemic, two, private sectors paying a lot more than what childcare providers are getting, and three, historic underinvestments.
Yeah, like I met a childcare provider who had a master's, who left her childcare program to get a job at Target.
Yes.
That paid significantly more.
Yes, yes.
So you have to be kind of dense to stay in childcare at this point because
Well,
it pays so low.
I mean, you have to be passionate and really love the kids, but that can only go so far when you can't pay your rent or mortgage.
Yeah, that can only go so far. So you think that the governor basically missed this? Like, why wouldn't they have done this?
Well, you know, it's not that we're grateful for the 70 million for pre-K and Head Start. We think that that's a really good step forward. But I think that because there was so much aid during the pandemic, people think that everything's been taken care of in childcare. That's just not the case. You know, kids are still at home because their parents can't go to work because there isn't a spot for them at a childcare program.
So I also heard that a lot of employers, one, they need more workers and there's not enough childcare. So that's a shame they didn't put any money in. But also, some employers are really looking to bring, like, people who are retail or hospitality, they need workers nights and weekends. Did the governor do anything about that?
He did. So he put in about 6 million to incentivize childcare providers to offer non-traditional childcare hours, which is a big deal because right now it is costly for them to offer those non-traditional hour care to children whose parents work, you know, night shifts, weekends, those kind of shifts. So yeah, we have 6 million for that. So that we're very grateful for.
So it sounds like we've got work to do to get money to the workers, and we still have to win the pre-K money because all he did was propose it.
That's right.
So how are we gonna get that money?
Well, we're going to work with our statewide early childhood campaigns. So I have a sign for our pre-K campaign, pre-K for PA, but I don't have a sign for our Start Strong PA campaign, which is our childcare campaign. So we're going to work together with our coalition across the state. We'll be meeting with legislators. We'll be, you know, putting forth a really strong case for why they need to make these investments. And we're not going to stop until we get it.
Excellent. And if you're watching and you depend on childcare, you got to contact mine because we need your help to get lawmakers to put the money on the table. Thank you, Mine. Keep up the fight. So, oh my God. So we got sunny, we got partly cloudy. I'm hoping the next part of the forecast is a little bit brighter, but who knows? It's tough in Harrisburg to get things for kids. And somebody who knows how hard it is Colleen McCauley, because she's been fighting the fight for kids for decades. So Colleen, well, first of all, she's a nurse. So if anybody has any illnesses right now, you put them in the chat. She can help you out. But that's her former job. Now she's also an activist for kids, and she's our health policy director. And Colleen, like, what do you think about the governor's budget?
Okay, well, I am gonna go with the partly sunny, partly cloudy forecast. Is this not partly sunny? This is a rainstorm. Here we go. Go back to kindergarten.
Why?
Tell you why. Okay, so some of the good news for kids, Donna, is around kids' health insurance, right? So we have in the governor's budget, he has ensured that our kids in Pennsylvania will be able to keep their Medicaid coverage and keep their CHIP, Children's Health Insurance Program coverage, right? Because 4 out of 10 kids in the Commonwealth rely on this insurance. So that's terrific news. It gives, I'm a parent, gives parents peace of mind that their kids have coverage and they can get the care that they need. Where we fall short, why it's partly sunny, is there's one last group of kids who are not eligible for public health insurance in Pennsylvania. And those are kids who don't have legal paperwork to be in the country, right? We think there are about 19,000 kids who are undocumented in Pennsylvania. And they're kids and they're here and they need health insurance. And, you know, Donna, you mentioned I'm a nurse. And so I think it's like unconscionable that I would be
working and have a kid that's having an asthma attack, and I say, I can't take care of you because you don't have insurance, you can't pay, that's not acceptable. So, what the governor can do what the legislature can do at this point is add about $7 million into the budget, and we'll be able to cover all kids like 7 other states do across the country. Yep.
So Colleen, that sounds like something that would have a lot of support down here in the Southeast, but what about across the state? Like, how are you gonna get that done? Who are you working with?
Yep, so I have my handy sign, Donna. Children First is helping to coordinate a campaign. And there's a group of 101 organizations around the entire state working together as part of the Dream Care Coalition, because these kids live all over the state, right? It's an issue for many counties, whether you're rural, suburban, urban. So we are working together. We'll be informing our legislators that these kids need coverage, and letting them know that it's totally doable.
Right, so if any medical professionals are watching and you want to help Colleen get Dream Care passed, contact her. Now, speaking of that, I think that there's some sunny news for mothers and their health care in the budget.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. So in this budget, there is money to ensure that women who have just given birth will be able to have insurance for 12 months after their baby is born through the Medicaid program if they don't otherwise have access to insurance. So moms can get the critical health care they need so they can be healthy and have a better chance than supporting their newborn and their other family members, if they're feeling good and in good health.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of concern about rising postpartum depression, especially during COVID.
Yeah.
Did they propose anything in that?
Right. So yes, in the governor's budget, there is money also for behavioral health. And to quote my boss, a shit ton of money. Funds across the state.
Specific 113 million, but that's okay.
So that's great news, right? Because this is hard, and so right, we're yucking it up here, but we know that women, parents, kids are really having a tough time during COVID. So this is really important budget item in the governor's budget.
So, okay, so it sounds like we've got health care for the moms, we've got post-delivery, we've got some postpartum, we've got some mental health. We don't have all the kids covered. And then, you've told us, Colleen, that more kids are poisoned in Pennsylvania from lead than were poisoned at the height of Flint, Michigan.
Right.
Not more kids, the greater risk. So what they do about lead in the budget?
Okay, so the bad news, the forecast when it comes to lead poisoning is not good. In this governor's budget, there's no state money to help parents and property owners, landlords, owner-occupied property owners, to remove dangerous lead paint hazards in their homes. And just like you said, there's 8,000 kids every year who come up with a positive lead test. And forgot what I was going to say, but yeah, so we've got 8,000 kids. In fact, if any of you listening have been to the Farm Show Center, that's enough kids to completely fill the farm show. That's a ton of kids, right? And it can be costly especially if you don't have a lot of disposable income or to be able to get the lead hazards out of your house. So no money in the governor's budget to help families get the lead out of their properties.
What are you going to do about that?
Right. So we're organizing. We're organized already, and I have another handy sign. Are coordinating a great group of organizations. We're 47 organizations and growing as part of the Lead-Free Promise Project statewide. And we are organized, and we are going to work to raise those state dollars to get lead out of kids' houses, to make sure all our kids are screened as well. So what we're talking about is, we're asking for 40 million bucks from the state to set up a fund. 40 million is the amount of money that the federal government has invested in Pennsylvania to help get lead out of kids' houses. So at the very least, we think that the governor, the legislature can match that 40 million and, you know, help parents and landlords protect kids.
Remind me, I think that federal 40 million came when Donald Trump was president, right?
It did.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And money for childcare came when Donald Trump was president, right? So the kinds of things we're working on, Republicans and Democrats ought to be able to get behind, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Right.
We're talking, you know, we're talking about kids here.
Yep, the great unifier.
You stole the words out of my mouth.
We have a question from the audience. One person wrote in and says, hey, that coverage that moms are going to get for 12 months, is that limited by income?
I believe it will be limited by income. You'll need to be otherwise eligible for Medicaid if you don't have access to insurance otherwise.
Well, but remember, we're in Obamacare days, so
Yeah.
there's an uncapped Medicaid eligibility if you're not working. So mothers who have delivered a baby and can't afford private health insurance, and they don't have a spouse who's got health insurance, it's going to be basically automatic coverage.
Yep.
So
Fantastic.
it's a great trend that's happening across the country because people recognize, right, Colleen, that look, a healthy mom is going to help raise a healthy baby. That's right. And a sick mom is going to have a hard time doing it. So, you know, we are laughing here because sometimes we have to take a break and have some fun with you, but this is serious stuff, and it's especially serious to the mothers and children that we're fighting for. So, Colleen, we're with you on this. Thank you. We'll have to get it sunnier. Now, Lori Dow is here with us tonight. Lori, good to see you. Lori is our Vulnerable Youth Project Policy Director, helping us fight for kids who are abused, neglected, and kids who unfortunately become in contact with the juvenile justice system, right?
Yes.
And what's your sense of the forecast from the budget?
Unfortunately, when we're talking about children who enter the child welfare system or intersect with the juvenile justice system in Pennsylvania, the outlook is partially cloudy.
Tell us why.
This was probably an instance of missed opportunities for the governor in his final budget address. When we talk about children in child welfare and juvenile justice, there are basically no allocations for them in the governor's budget.
No new
allocations for them in the governor's budget. Thank you very much. This is we just closed out a year, 2021, where the governor instigated a reform process by creating the PA Juvenile Justice Task Force. This was something where a blue ribbon panel of professionals in the state came together to look for ways to improve the system in juvenile justice, to remove inequities, and to increase or improve outcomes for juveniles. They recommended 35 improvements or changes to the system. And from those, the governor could have selected any number of them to provide additional funding for children in Pennsylvania. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. Things like doing an assessment of the educational systems at facilities in Pennsylvania, or creating additional or funding additional prevention and diversion programs for children in juvenile justice. Those are just two of the opportunities that were missed in this situation.
Well, did the budget include anything to help these kids?
Well, that's where it gets to be a little bit sunny in the budget. So what we have is the governor did provide some funding for CASA. Those are court-appointed special advocates. These are volunteers that are trained around the state to be a voice for the best interests of children in the courts, those children who intersect the child welfare system in Pennsylvania. So they have received additional funds in this budget.
Anything else?
Yes. Adding to that, as we've had from everyone who has spoken tonight, anything that really benefits every child in Pennsylvania, of course, benefits children in the child welfare and the juvenile justice systems. For instance, increased funding to Head Start. That's one of the wonderful options that for their entire lives will improve the outcomes for children in this state by giving them a leg up on education, learning, and developmental skills. So of course that will benefit children in the child welfare and the juvenile justice systems. The other great benefit that tangentially impacts children in Pennsylvania is the governor recommended an increase to the minimum wage in Pennsylvania. Our parents are working adults in Pennsylvania. Anyone who is receiving hourly wage in Pennsylvania and is dependent on minimum wage, that's not a livable wage. What the governor has recommended is something that will bring it up a little bit, but to $12 an hour. That will impact all of our families, and particularly for children in the child welfare and juvenile justice systems who frequently are children of parents who are low-income wage earners.
Yeah, so the way I see that, right now, if I'm earning the minimum wage, I'm earning about $14,000 a year. Under the governor's proposal, I'd be earning a whopping $24,000, but it's a $10,000 increase. And if you're in that wage bracket, that's a godsend. That's a godsend. And it's the difference between buying your kid a book and not, and maybe a book is the thing that keeps the kid out of the juvenile justice system. Not to be too simplistic, but when things are hard, it's hard on kids, right?
Exactly. Buying a book, or with the increase, with inflation that we're experiencing all around the country and in this state, the increased cost of food, the increased cost of anything that you want to purchase. We've all seen it go into the supermarket.
Yeah.
This will give additional benefits to families to feed their children.
Yeah. And I think I've heard that every state around Pennsylvania has a higher minimum wage, even West Virginia.
Yeah.
So, I mean, West Virginia can do it.
Pennsylvania certainly can.
Certainly, absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Laura.
Thank
We're
you.
in there for the fight with you. Thank you so much. Let me round this out a little bit by telling you two pieces of information about the governor's budget. One is that the governor's budget proposes all of the new investments you heard about tonight and others, with still leaving $2.8 billion in the state's surplus account, which is called the Rainy Day Fund. The Rainy Day Fund, apropos the PA forecast, is still available to the legislature to do more with, because for thousands of children in Pennsylvania, it's raining right now. So that budget that the governor proposed with this basic education funding increase, I should say with $400 million more for higher education, $70 million for pre-K and Head Start, the funds to maintain CHIP and Medicaid. All of that was made possible, and still we have $2.8 billion in surplus. That's the first thing. The second thing is that the governor's budget proposes a 20% business tax cut to a tax called the corporate net income tax. So companies across Pennsylvania are going to get a giant tax cut. And one hopes that that will stimulate job hiring, although we already have 4.6 million more jobs than people looking for them in some measure because of childcare. But nevertheless, that's the theory of that tax cut. Agree with it or not, if the state can afford that tax cut, which on a yearly basis costs $150 million, it can afford $7 million to cover undocumented children. It can afford $40 million to permanently get the lead out of our homes. It can afford services to kids to divert them from juvenile justice, and it can afford increases in childcare so people can afford to go to work there and care for everybody else's children. So there's a lot of opportunity in this budget. There's a huge amount of work that needs to be done to get to meet that opportunity. We invite you to join Children First, become an advocate with us to make sure we build on the governor's budget proposal and make it a sunny day for every child in Pennsylvania. And that's the Pennsylvania forecast. Thank you very much for watching.